Incremental greetings. Here's a video for Winston, and he ponders a question. Why Wozniak failed to teach users how to use it? I'm not going to react to the full video, by the way, just this question. First, let's see why he mentions that. I will add my 2 cents in case it's required. Then I will take my stance, and lately, the final thing, I will tell you my opinion on that. So let's go.
Wozniak failed to teach user how to use it. Okay, yes, that's I don't know why I said fail now that I'm looking at again. I'm not exactly sure Wozniak failed. It's just he's have a very limited user base, like technical, and have time on their hands, unlike Anki. So it's different usages of SuperMemo, blah blah blah. He's still well consumed. Yeah, Giorgio. So they did this incremental writing. So Giorgio has this approach, which is kind of similar to what I'm doing, like having some thoughts, writing all the thoughts down, extracting them, they become a subtopic, and I'm rambling. Yeah. Not anything radical. Okay, so by anything radical, I sort of just mean this, like procedural practices. I've been using this collection for quite a long time. As you can see, it's just chaotic.
Okay, he's going slightly sideways. Okay, so first, asking why, this already makes the assumption that he failed, by the way. And failed in the sense that not, at least how I perceive this. So what I'm not saying is why SuperMemo is not popular, why it's so obscure, or the interface is ridiculously ugly. No, I don't mean any of that. We know that Piotr Wozniak created the software because for him, he was experienced forgetting, and with his own experimentation, he did spaced repetition. That was on paper, by the way. Then he did SuperMemo, implementing spaced repetition. And with time, 15 years or 13 years later, 13 years later, at the first release of the software, he added incremental reading, like a superset of spaced repetition. But again, it was to solve his own problem. So, makes sense that SuperMemo is very idiosyncratic according to its creator, Piotr Wozniak, because he was just solving his problems. He was not a software developer to create a product for humanity, let's say. He was just trying to solve his own problem. And now, well, there are more people who learn, so there are more people who will have the same needs. They will keep forgetting and all of that, right? That's why he make it available for humanity, for society to try it. Then, it's not democratic. It's a private company. And it's not open source yet. So the user input is limited. They have no requirement to follow the user feedback. So all of this combined, and because it's been very, very long time, makes SuperMemo a very hard software to get introduced to. But at some degree, we could say it's not the software per se. At some degree, it is because of the old school implementation and bugginess. But it's because of the paradigm that is implementing. So I will reformulate this as that why Piotr Wozniak failed to teach users how to use incremental reading. Because if I check more or less my mental image, after more than 4 years being in the community, having used SuperMemo very, very vividly, very passionately, and even having seen people moving on SuperMemo, or people who never actually tried, or more importantly, and especially now, that I have reacted to 2/3 of the videos that are online in YouTube featuring SuperMemo. What I also realized is, wow, so I was already aware that most of the people who use SuperMemo and even hired me for tutoring sessions, they were not doing incremental reading. Incremental reading, how it's meant to be used, the proper way, or the Wozniakian way. So not because you use SuperMemo, you are using incremental reading, that's the thing, or not because you think you're using SuperMemo right, you're actually using incremental reading, how it's meant to be used. And to my surprise, even some long-term users, they were having very, very big holes, but I would say more like misconceptions. It's not that, oh, you acquired a bad habit. No, it's that you didn't understand how it's meant to be used. That doesn't mean that you're wrong. It's that the tool or the method hasn't been built with this intention in mind. Then, if I ask the question, why Wozniak failed to teach users how to use SuperMemo for incremental reading, it's because he is very idiosyncratic and he hasn't tried. First, he suffers from the curse of knowledge. He takes this for granted, or it's very second nature for him. Then, since it's very idiosyncratic, this even adds insult to injury, because it's designed how he sees it. Yes, he had done some videos in his YouTube channel. He has an extensive wiki, not just for the software or the paradigm, the method of incremental reading, but also behind the paradigm of self-directed learning, the course of the school system that goes with it, and so on. So here are my 2 cents. He didn't fail. So even if the result, I genuinely believe it's a failure. Also, the technical customer support, it's laughable. You buy the key, you don't get the key, you don't get the email, it comes with the spam, stuff like this that I'm not going to mention, but it's ridiculous. To this, they have still this problem. I think they did a failure in the sense that they are not popular, yes, but that's not the question. Is they haven't communicated this, how SuperMemo, incremental reading is meant to be used. And here's my perspective. At some degree, at quite extensive degree, it's self-directed. So there is no way to communicate this to you, to the user, because it's self-exploratory. I always say that incremental reading requires to use it, to experience it in your own skin. And then it's, oh, now I do understand when he mentions this and that. Now makes sense in practice. So just by reading definitions and examples, it's not enough. Even with watching a full-fledged video of an hour long, it's not enough to understand it. You need this incrementalism to do it little by little and then have this effect. Now I get it. And because I have been very extensively in the community, very often, almost every single day, I help a few hundred people to use SuperMemo for incremental reading purposes. With some exceptions, they didn't want incremental reading. Yes, but just in a very small percentage. So I have a lot of data, even if I have been around for just 4 years. But in my case, I know every time I know I'm more like an outlier. Because since the very beginning, I experimented a lot. And sometimes I discovered something or I realized something that is not tangible. And it's not even in the documented in text. Some videos I have to do when you export a file or something that, hey, I cannot tell you what it is because it's not documented. It has never been documented to begin with. But I came across some bugs, some obscure bugs that luckily 2 or 3 have been fixed, by the way. But why no one reported that some bugs were present for years? And why no one noticed that? Well, because I was experimenting a lot with SuperMemo, running a lot of tests with backups, because it was pleasurable for me. But to the point is that most of my usage, most of what I do and know about SuperMemo comes from my own experience with it. And if I say SuperMemo, I also don't mean the tool, the incremental reading method. So it doesn't matter how much documentation I have in SuperMemo, which I also read, by the way. there's some degree of responsibility, let's say, that comes from the user and has to come from the user because incremental reading is self-directed. You cannot expect to have like a teacher and direct all of the understanding and passively you understand all of it. That's why the number one reason that Piotr failed, yes, but also the user kind of shares this, let's say, this responsibility. What happens is that I experience a lot of friction. So perhaps I don't even going to try SuperMemo to begin with because it looks terrible. For many people, this already is a deal breaker. Let's discard that. Oh, it's SuperMemo, it's because of Windows, some other technicalities. Let's discard that. I start using SuperMemo. Gotcha. Then I start incremental reading. Well, let me understand this method, how it works, using SuperMemo. Now with SuperMemo, I'm familiar with the menus, the interface, the windows, all of that. So I'm more inclined to invest time on the actual method, not the hard skills of the software. What happens is that many people, the vast majority, gives up before reaching this tipping point. Because in order to fully understand incremental reading, you have to do incremental reading. And if you don't invest time enough to defeat your beliefs, to understand what is counterintuitive, that sometimes is not counterintuitive, you just have bad habits from the school that now when it's self-directed, doesn't make sense. But later on, when you get it, is, oh wow, it is blatantly obvious, right? I have a hard time believing my previous self, thinking it was hard to understand or counterintuitive. I mean the method, not the software. And that's why, if those people, those users, could keep going, they will get incremental reading. And they will use the tool more how it's meant to be used. And an extra layer is that some people stabilize at some point, a sweet spot, that, it's within my tolerance, friction. But they just do a subset of the features. No worries, I have a video on that. I'm actually now using less features of SuperMemo, but my incremental reading is even better than before. That's not the point. But then I realized that, oh, whoa, I have a call with them or a paid tutoring session, and then I realize, oh wow, they are actually farther of what they think. Yeah, and it's not of the how much time you have put. I don't know how to mention it. Is that they don't understand incremental reading. At least incremental reading, how I think it's designed, how it's meant to be used, the Wozniakian incremental reading. And to my surprise, if I now think about in the community, based on the knowledge I have from them, especially if they have shared videos or their comments, because some people I have known from years, not many people actually understand incremental reading, the full-fledged incremental reading, the true incremental reading, proper incremental reading. Call it whatever you want. I will struggle to mention people that I have information, enough evidence, that that person knows incremental reading. So in that sense, yes, Piotr Wozniak failed at this, big time. But at some degree, also depends on the user. Because without the commitment of the user, the self-directedness of the user, it's impossible. It's impossible. If it was 100% passive, it won't be incremental reading. So there's a neuron component that is self-directed. You have to finish the understanding. Let's phrase it like that. And it has been like a very, very broad alignments of component, a very broad coincidences for me that I had a lot of time, I was very engaged, I'm already self-directed, or many personality traits that for me was very easy. Very, very easy. It was just a matter of time. I don't mean easy that, I hadn't had a hard time. I did. Easy in the sense that it was just I had whatever I needed to get to the solution or to improve to the next iteration. So I had the path almost guaranteed. And the key is that it has always been pleasurable. That's the best. If I take this off, I won't be recording videos about this, most likely. Slightly longer than I thought, but those were my 2 cents. Let me know if you think how confident you are you really got what incremental reading is. There's a video I reacted to James. At the time of the recording, it's still not online, but once you see this video, it will be. Check that video. It's the fourth and last video it's the fourth commentary of James. And you will see some comments that, that's not that incremental. Or that session was not incremental reading at all. So let me know if you think you have understood incremental reading method, even if you don't apply it because it's too much friction for you and so on. And let me know if you disagree with me of everything I have said in this video and any other video. Let me know. Nothing more to add today, and see you incrementally.